the 6 episodes, whatever it is. So Richard Gadd told you he'd like to hang. That this is only sentiment, the central point of the story, the point here, which they say is intimidating Richard Gadd and getting a 9-month prison sentence. It was somebody was with Laura Ray, who you worked with her.
But we were all friends.
Okay, I'm sorry for all those weird sounds you just heard. It's actually a compilation of these weird moan sounds that Martha Scott, who I'll talk about in a second, made on the Piers Morgan show as she was being interviewed by him. Every time he seems to start talking, she's just making these weird sounds. So I had to include it. I thought it was too strange. I hope you liked it. Anyways, Martha Scott, who is she? Well, she is a character on the Netflix series Baby Reindeer. This is a story about a man named Donnie Dunn who is serial stalked by Martha Scott. Donnie Dunn is actually played by Richard Gadd. Richard Gadd is the actual victim of this apparent true story, and he plays himself in the show, which is pretty interesting. He does a great job. Hopefully we'll see some more roles from him in the future, but I thought he did fantastic. So he works at this bar, and he's a struggling comedian. It's kind of his little backstory for you. If you haven't seen the show, I would highly recommend it. It was very interesting, like pretty freaky, but like if that was to happen to you, but it's very interesting. Anyways, one day this lady who is Martha Scott, she comes into the bar, looks a little down on her luck, just kind of sits at the bar, not really ordering anything, not talking to anybody. And Donnie notices this, and he feels bad for her. And out of the kindness of his heart, he walks over and says, "Hey, take a Diet Coke on the house." Well, knowing the end of his story, it's unfortunately one of the worst mistakes that he's made in his life. I obviously can't say for certain. I'm not Donnie Dunn. I'm not Richard Gadd. Same person, right? I'm neither of them. But in my opinion, it's a horrible mistake to make. And also, spoiler alerts from here on out. If you've not seen the show, I'm going to be talking about some things that happen. I don't want to ruin it for you, so maybe pause here and go check it out. And we'd come back, I don't know, go do whatever you want. I'm not your boss. Well, anyways, it's one of the worst mistakes of his life, in my opinion, right? Because Martha Scott is actually a previously convicted violent stalker. And it is worth mentioning, Martha Scott is not her real life name. From this interview with Piers Morgan, it's okay. It's hard to say that this is the real Martha Scott because she denies everything, but also admits to something. So it's pretty strange. I think her name is Fiona Harvey. I'm not sure if she's changed her name in the past, but the one she gave Piers is Fiona Harvey. So this random act of kindness by Donnie actually causes her to stalk him for the next 3 years because she is kind of mentally ill, and takes all his niceties as they're dating, and he's always flirting with her. So throughout the show, we see kind of the stalking get slightly increased a little bit until it's insane. She'll follow his route home and kind of block him from moving, and she's a little bit of a bigger lady, so and he's kind of frail and small, so it's a little bit intimidating. He can't get past her, and she knows that, so she's blocking him off, stuff like that. Or she'll be sitting outside of his house at the bus stop for days at a time, or go to his stand-up shows and kind of just heckle him the whole time, or she starts singing all the time. It's a beautiful voice, serenading him, but I don't know, it's strange. But yeah, anyways, today something really interesting happened with this story. So apparently, fans right when this came out, they went to Richard Gadd's Twitter and went back to around the time frame this would have happened. Immediately found tweets towards him that were pretty much the exact same things we see in the show. This lady saying, calling him Baby Reindeer, or to hang her curtains, which is a sexual innuendo that keeps coming up within the show. But yeah, there's this lady in his Twitter, way back when, sending him these tweets, and or mentioning him, replying to him, all this stuff with this exact same lingo that we see throughout the show. Super interesting, super weird. But she was on Piers Morgan's show and he interviewed her. I just got finished watching the interview. Obviously, I'm not Richard Gadd. I'm not her. I don't know the real story. She admits to various things consistent with the show, but also denies like 90% of things that could be proven. Like she's a lawyer, so she keeps talking about taking this to court. Well, one of the big like factual things about this is that she sent him like 41,000 emails within 2-3 years. Sent him like hundreds and hundreds of voicemails. Threatened his family over voicemail. Like his mom and dad kept calling them over and over. You know, stuff like this. Like that can be proven. Factual things that he has like said that he has maintained records of. Like he has all these recordings. He has all these emails. He's got all of this proof that she did this stuff. And Pierce like mentions this to her, like, you know, like if what you're saying is true, Netflix and Richard Gadd, they've like incredibly defamed you in a way that would make no sense. If, like, in my opinion, if I was like, I'm no producer or anything, but if Richard Gadd came to me and I was a producer at Netflix and he's like, hey, I got this great idea for a show and pitched it, you know, I'd kind of want, and he pitched it as a true story, I'd kind of want to see proof, right? And I'd want to see all these emails or voicemails that he's got saved. And unless I truly believed it, I don't think I'd make the show. It probably cost millions to produce, right? Well, that's Piers Morgan's point to her. They can prove this stuff in the court of law when they go to discovery, which is gathering evidence for the prosecution and defense, whatever. These things are going to come up and it's going to be proven that, yeah, you are this person, or no, you're not. And she continuously like denies everything. In the show, she's made out to be this person that's like very mentally ill and doesn't see logic in things or sees like what she wants to see. So it's fitting with the character and how she's portrayed. So it's a really like, it's like this loop of, well, could it be her? Yeah, but she's denying everything. But well, also the character in the show denies everything, or she seems like crazy and like untrustworthy. So it's like this dilemma. You can either choose to believe it or not believe it. But anyways, it's a really interesting interview. Towards the end of the interview, she claims to have a photographic memory. And that's why she was such a great student in her law school or whatever, going to school to get her law degree or her degree in political science and women's studies and stuff. But then she can't remember her grades that she got, or I've always assumed photographic memory is you can remember anything. Maybe it means like things that you find important. I don't know. But it really seemed like she was picking and choosing things to remember. At first she was saying she has never sent emails or tweets to Richard Gadd. And then almost the next sentence immediately backtracks and says, oh, maybe I sent like 18, or, you know, maybe I sent like 10 emails. I don't know. It's immediately backtracking what she said, all things that can be proven, right? If she really does want to push this into the court of law and take him to trial, Netflix and Richard Gadd and Daily Mail and all these, I hate to say it, but I don't know, maybe me, like people that are saying this is true and defaming her, right? Just a lot of inconsistencies in what she's saying, kind of blinking a lot as soon as she starts to deny something, things that maybe like somebody would notice in a liar, right? Like dodging questions or kind of looking away or making weird moan sounds. I don't know. Something interesting I noticed was she was constantly worried about not so much as like the facts that Netflix was saying are true, like that she's this stalker and did all these things to Richard Gadd. She was like attacking the lady that plays Martha Scott. Oh, I'm 58. Well, she's like 40, or like inconsistencies with the character herself rather than the actual, like she has problems with that, but not the issues at hand. Like, which I think in the show was also something she did. It was, she couldn't understand acting, I think. I could be making this up, but like that somebody could be just joking around. So it's almost like she wanted the main character to be more like her, angry that this lady was younger than she is and didn't have the actual Scottish accent she does, or like just small inconsistencies here and there. One of the big things within the Netflix show itself, Baby Reindeer, was that she would appear at the bar sometimes before opening, but always on the days he was working, and not when he wasn't, she would like be wherever he was, right? just following him all the time. One of the things she denied in the interview was she would only go to the bar that he worked at like when he wasn't there, and then she would only order food. Whereas in the show, maybe I'm reading into this too much, she would go to the bar when he was working, right? But then get a Diet Coke every time on the house. So it's like she was like trying to seem inconsistent with the character, like in her own terms, like, oh no, I would go when he wasn't there and I'd get food every time. Whereas the show was saying the opposite. So one thing about her is that in the show, they portray her as she always like has all these friends or acquaintances she's got to go meet, and she knows all these people and famous people. And at one point, the main character is like in her home and sees like, I think like these photos with her face like photoshopped onto, oh no, sorry, it's on her Facebook. He sees her Facebook and she's got all these like famous photos of, I don't know, like walking with the president. I'm making this up, but like walking with the president or like famous people. And then like one of these people in the crowd is like her head photoshopped on top. He quickly learns like she doesn't actually have all these friends and doesn't have these acquaintances. And she actually doesn't live in a mansion. She lives in a tiny little apartment she's kind of like a hoarder. There's trash everywhere. In the Pierce Morgan interview, she will constantly be like, I've never seen the show. Like someone's daughter told me about blah, blah, blah this morning, like some scene this morning, or, like all of her acquaintances have told her about these various scenes, and that's how she knows about things Pierce is asking her, which is very fitting with the character in the show, like having all those acquaintances that Richard Gedd or Donnie Dunn, our main character, finds out to be false. It's always like and since she's a lawyer, she kind of like knows what to say and what to do to get around things. One of the biggest things we find out in the show is that Baby Reindeer, the term of endearment she keeps calling Donnie, is actually a doll or like a baby reindeer she had when she was a child. This is what we know from the show. Like it's the baby reindeer that she had as a child that she like comforted and meant a ton to her because and she'd like hug it and talk to it whenever her parents were fighting, which she says was like happening all the time. And that's ultimately the reason why she's so attached to this guy, Donnie Dunn, because she sees him as this baby reindeer, and this baby reindeer was such a protector growing up. And she sees that in him as an adult, which is just a sign of kind of her mental illness and like the level she's holding this guy to that really has no relation to her. But in the interview with Pierce, it actually comes up that she did have a baby reindeer when she was a child, and her parents got divorced, which I'm reading into this, but I assume they were yelling at each other all the time. So there's another coincidence, right? That just happens to align with the show and with the real life Fiona Harvey character. And one thing I do want to say is Pierce did a great job interviewing her. He seemed to come to it with a pretty like level head, maybe knows like who he's up against, and maybe he has fact checked all of this and he knows that this is the lady, right? But he seemed to like see both sides, and maybe he was just trying to get her to admit to specific things, but he did a great job kind of catching inconsistencies, she might say, and kind of drilling down to get the truth or to get her to admit anything, which he did a handful of times. At first she was saying, like I was saying earlier, she had never sent tweets or emails, but then he got her to admit like she sent a letter, she left him some voicemails, she did email him, she did tweet at him like at least 18 times, right? He was trying to get her to admit to doing these things rather than the more serious things, maybe as a way to connect the two. I don't know. It would be hard to talk with her like that because she is a lawyer and she probably knows what he's trying to do, even though she's a little twisted. Pierce did a fantastic job kind of showing the people the lady he was dealing with. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for us here. I was a huge fan of the show. I think Richard Gedd did a phenomenal job playing himself and especially reliving all that trauma. I think he did very well. And I was very shocked to see the real life Martha Scott, right? Fiona Harvey come out and talk to Pierce Morgan on the air, like about denying everything and just maybe giving her side of the story here. That was crazy because Netflix and Richard Gedd both did a very good job of trying to keep her hidden. I'm not sure if they changed things throughout the show, but I know they didn't release a name. He asked on his social media, like, hey, please don't go looking for people. That's not what this is about. But yeah, fans found her like a day after the release, and I don't know. We're gonna see. I'm gonna try to keep up with this here, and if there's like new things coming to the story, I'll be talking about it because it's just crazy. But yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.